Hello, you are listening to 88.1 FM WELH Providence, BSR Student and Community Radio, serving the curious listener. You're listening to the radio show right now. I'm your host, Shane Farrell, and our topic for this week is nervousness. I don't know about any of you listeners out there, but I, for one, am a very nervous person, especially in social situations. Parties and gatherings aren't really comfortable territory for me. I tend to get quiet, maybe go off on my own or leave when nobody's paying attention. For Brice Peterson, it's not social situations that make him nervous, but rather more of a digital situation. Have a listen.
Close your eyes and listen. What do you find yourself picturing? A plumber, maybe? Green warp pipes? Turtles in green and red shells, small mushroom-like creatures being squashed, mercilessly, or worse, being burnt by huge fireballs, large spotted red plants with fangs creeping up from the ground to attack. For many people of my generation, this is a song steeped in nostalgia. It's a song that, for most people, brings back only the warmest of memories, time spent with family and friends, the carefree days of youth when you'd come home from school, have a snack, and sit down in front of your TV, blowing the dust out of your game cartridge, popping it in, and turning on the Nintendo. The original Super Mario Bros. Game celebrates its 25th anniversary this year, and though I may have grown away from video games since my youth, the occasion brings back a flurry of memories for me. But the most vivid memories seem to be about just how scared I used to be about playing video games, specifically Super Mario Bros. 2, which came out in 1988. The game was very different from the first one. At the beginning of each level, you choose one character to play as, either Mario, his brother Luigi, Princess Peach, or Toad. There were new villains, small rat-like men dressed in white robes, red hooded creatures wearing white masks, pink dinosaurs which shot eggs from their oval snouts. As a young boy, I couldn't handle it all. Oddly enough, my parents were always supportive of video game playing. They saw it as just another recreational activity, a stress release, and even a creative form of entertainment. They were always more encouraging than most parents of me spending time playing video games. But I simply couldn't. I was still very young, yes, maybe 5 or 6, but I always made my older sister play the games while I watched. No, that's okay, I'd say. It's only single player. I'll just watch for now. When she didn't want to play, I'd even resort to asking my mom to take over. But somehow, always, it came to be my turn. My hands grew cold and tense on the rectangular gray controller. I always picked the princess as my character, even though she was the slowest and the weakest, because she could float when she jumped. I'd play through each level just by jumping and floating over obstacles. It made it easier on me just by avoiding all the perils of the Mushroom Kingdom. But I never got past the game's boss. That was always the chore for my sister. I remember him clearly. Wart, an obese, rotten toad, king over the foreign land. He was draped in opulent purple robes and carried a scepter which he used to attack you. To beat him, you had to throw vegetables into his gaping mouth before he spit more vile creatures at you. Too much? Apparently not. See, there's an odd story behind this game. It's not even the real sequel to the original Super Mario Bros. In Japan, it was released as Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic, a licensed game Nintendo made for Fuji Electronics to showcase their mascots. Nintendo's own sequel to Super Mario Bros. Wasn't released in America because they thought it was too hard and too intense for American audiences. Instead, they changed some graphics and slapped the Mario name on Doki Doki Panic, then released it in the West. So here I was, not even able to handle the dumbed-down version of the game. What I soon realized the real problem was, though, was that I was simply afraid of losing. Did anyone ever think that dying in the game might be upsetting? I mean, who wants to die, right? And death is like losing, so I certainly didn't want either. This, to me, was a life lesson, well learned at the hands of a video game. Eventually, I got over my fear and had a long love affair with video games. When Super Mario Bros. 2 was re-released in 2001, I even liked the game. A whole lot. Though I still picked the princess to play. And since then, I may have grown out of my fear of the Mushroom Kingdom, but I'll always have those memories. Whenever I get a tense grip on my controller, my palms sweating, fingers aching to keep up coordination, I just have to say to myself, it's just a game. No need to be nervous. No more will I have to go floating over the obstacles of life. Thanks, Mario. Have a happy birthday. And thanks to my mom and sister, too.
Next up, we're going to have a piece that was submitted to us anonymously, followed by 2 readings that were sent in by Ben Tucker. On nervousness. I don't know whether it's the neurotic kid standing alone in the corner of a crowded room or a multi-million-dollar industry of psychoactive patents and benzodiazepines that's more relevant here, but it's the first of the 2 that I'm familiar with, so I guess that's what I'll stick to. In the modern spirit, to understand the sensation is to pick the kid himself apart. And I don't know you, so I guess I'll keep the matter personal, in some sense anyway. As a child, the word nervousness always confused me, a false cognate for frustration in my native tongue. It's through the reconciliation of this meaning with its English counterpart that I ultimately understood the feeling. The common denominator was the impression of nerves, both of internal organs and surface skin, so that the sweat on your palms and your sinking stomach both communicated the same thing. You're alive. Try to keep it this way. Just what that meant, however, always varied. In a sense, it was the same response, a response to the modern world, which, over time, I've found, continues to grow increasingly intimate but stays impersonal, places emphasis on knowledge but not understanding, and upholds aesthetics above substance. But after all, who's got the time? If the distinction between life and theater blurs, so be it. Maybe there was no difference to begin with. Several days ago, I got a message from a friend's mother, 1,000 miles away back home. Her friend had lost a son in a scuba diving accident. She wanted to let me know, she said, because she saw that the boy's older sister and I are Facebook friends. We'd graduated high school together. I'd know the mother, too, even if I didn't remember. She worked in the bakery of the grocery store where I had my first job. Maybe you should offer a word of sympathy. I didn't. What I did do, however, was find out everything I could to contextualize the event. There was a story in place. To sympathize, I just had to connect the familiar faces with the familiar places and fill in the details. Was the story real? Maybe. But that didn't seem to matter when all the details were at my fingertips. A search of the boy's name online gave the setting. A quarry some 30 miles from the house where I grew up. A Facebook profile provided the character. A statement from my high school's principal, complete with the listing of the boy's AP classes, made for a backstory. When I read the report again on a local newspaper's website, it was much more vivid. There was a Boy Scout retreat one warm Saturday. It was 82 degrees outside, unusually high for September, and a heavy-set boy with a broad, flat nose and a pair of wire-framed glasses sat in the back seat of a sedan driving down the highway alongside 3 other badge-clad scouts. Outside the window, trees zoomed by while neighboring cars crawled. The sun shone high in the sky and cast a bothersome light on the boy, such that he had to lean forward in his seat to keep it out of his eyes. The oldies station played the same old songs, and the engine maintained. The car's tires crunching over gravel as it pulled up to the quarry announced their arrival. The boy and his friends got out and watched a caravan pull into the parking lot after them. From each of the cars, 4 Boy Scouts emerged, followed by a driver. Together they walked to the Kankakee gear rental cabin. The scout leader signed off a few liability forms. The boy tucked away his wireframes along with his clothes in a 25-cent locker, and they walked outside toward the water. The quarry drew its name from native tribes of the region and prided itself on a reputation of pristine waters and exquisite rock formations. Viewed on a map, it was a Rorschach blot shaped like the head of a dog panting to catch its breath. The scouts birthed from a dock on the protruding piece of land that separated the creature's tongue from the roof of its mouth, 4 in each boat. Excitement fluttered in the boy's stomach while the motorboat droned and the group's leader recapped precautions on scuba diving one last time as they pulled away from the shore. Without his glasses, his vision blurred, and the trees along the water bank didn't look too much different from their smeared reflection in the water. A few hundred yards from shore, they turned off the boat's engine and it drifted to a stop. The boys put on their diving masks, checked the tubes, and dove in, 3 at a time. One by one they submerged, and one by one they surfaced. In the depths, the water constricted their bodies, and their hearts strained to pump nitrogen through the bloodstream. Upon surfacing, they felt weightless. After the second round of diving, it came to be the boy's turn to stay in the boat while the other scouts descended. The sun and the breeze dried his hair, and looking around, he could see 8 other boats just like his, littered across the lake. Divers climbing in and out of some, lone scouts sitting in others. When it was time for his third dive, it took the boy longer than others. One by one, the scouts surfaced eagerly, but the boy wouldn't come up. Come to think of it, no one had seen him when they descended the water, and soon they started to worry. They called in an emergency, and everyone cleared the water while men with flashlights dragged the broad lake. An hour, 2, they found nothing, and the boy's bloated body floated up from the depths on its own 200 yards from where they last saw him above the surface. Whether his lungs tore open before his brain hemorrhage was unclear from the autopsy, so no one could be quite sure of how it had felt. But I see him wide-eyed, draped in the water's heavy darkness, looking up towards the fainter, blurred shades near the surface, while his mind moved too frantically to realize that they were all out of reach. Maybe he knew he was alive. Maybe he grew resigned towards the feeling. That part even I can't tell you. The service was held at a church named after Mary, where a preacher spoke wistfully of a family that had lost a strong light. 2 days later, the mother found a lost Himalayan kitty on Farmville. Her daughter spent the day working in the stables. The story ended, and for that, I feel nervous. I'm flying back home this winter to see my family, to buy groceries in the supermarket where the boy's mother works, to eat roomy-eyed meals at the diner where her daughter still works as a waitress, to visit old teachers at her son's old high school. The story ended, I tell myself. I'm always nervous because I don't know how it will pick up in real life.